you loud and clear. Over.
Good. 11, I need to communicate with you after the 10 o'clock hour so that we can take care of some business. Over.
Copy that, NCO.
This is network control. Standing by. Sir 11, stand by for the message of the day at 0900 hours.
Copy that. Sir 11, standing by.
After action report, Streamcast after action report coming up in 4 minutes and 52 seconds. Mobile 10 to NCO, mobile 10 to NCO. Everything's all set up. Check your text. Check your text. Everything's all set up. YouTube and everything. Over.
10-4. This is network control. Standing by.
Mobile 10, clear. All right. I'm just gonna Mobile 10, Mobile 10. This is Mobile 10 testing our Streamcast coming up in 4 minutes. Mobile 10, Mobile 10. This is Mobile 10 testing our Streamcast coming up in 4 minutes. What else, Stu?
Hey, Doug.
All right, we up. We're on YouTube, and we're up. I just sent Wally the YouTube information. And the
Yeah,
link.
he had called me, so he told me got it.
Okay, so it's up, and well, I just heard myself talking on it. So we're
On the radio?
on all of that, YouTube, all that. So
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
don't say nothing profane.
Oh, yeah, I see we were YouTubing. Okay. What on Streaming University?
No, it's on. You go to. Hold on. Let me send you the thingy, Bobby. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
In fact, since you're a co-host, you know where it says live on YouTube, the little arrow thing.
Yeah.
You click on that, and then it'll ask you, do you want to go straight to YouTube, and it'll open another window on YouTube. Make sure you.
I got you. I'm doing it now.
Yeah, make sure you shut the mic off though. When you on the YouTube side, otherwise you get feedback. I'm gonna shut my mic off for a second. I gotta do something for Instagram. You should be able to hear the radio check. So test that. Go on your WAN thing. I mean the hen thing, and do a check. Just talk on that. I think you should be able to hear yourself on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Then I'll be right back.
All right.
YouTube testing YouTube, radio check. Do the YouTube check again, Stu.
All units. You're listening to WPKJ.
Do the YouTube check again,
All
Stu.
information and emergency network.
Do
Is April 6, 2020. The weather today is partly cloudy at this time, 50 degrees. The high today will be 64. The low tonight will be 48. There's 40% chance of rain today, 0% chance of rain in the next hour. Wind is 7 miles an hour. We are conducting today, April 6th, we are conducting an experimental operation which we will be on the internet with Zoom, in a Zoom meeting.
Come on, man. Go.
On YouTube. This is a weekly broadcast that comes on, and we will be part of it. Our radio checks will be being broadcast, which means do not give any personal information, telephone numbers, use the landline. Tuesday's meeting is in effect, and Wednesday's class is in effect. Stand by for the 10 text line with the information of the broadcast. network control, standing by. Well, before I stand by, I can get the Zoom ID. If you have a pen,
Don't give that out.
It's 708.
Wally, don't give that out.
3. Next line for the YouTube number. This is network control standing by.
Hey, Stuart.
Yeah, Doc.
He was giving up the.
Talk about protocol violation.
Okay, so the YouTube thing that he wants to give out is Streamcast.
Experiment.
It's an experiment. It's okay. Streamcast. Well, let me get the exact title of the YouTube play. The YouTube title is Streamcast After Action Report WEBT 4620. That's all people get. Otherwise, everybody will be in on the broadcast bar. You probably don't want that. So Streamcast After Action Report WEBT 4620. Or you could just type in B1 Harlem and go to where it says video, click on live. Take what you call them on the landline and tell them to?
Thanks, sir.
Okay, why don't you take care of that right quick while I do Bob Ponce is waiting, so we're gonna put Bob on.
All right, that's a good copy.
Okay. Bob? Good morning, Bob. Oh, you got his mic on. Bob, you're on, Bob. Okay. Bob Ponce. Bob, you're in there. You're on the broadcast there, Bob. You can. Oh, you got your mic on, Mike. Okay.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good.
Stu's
how are you?
Right. Stu's on with myself and Stu, and we're also live on YouTube at the Streamcast After Action Report, WEBT 4620.
That's not long enough.
You can also go to B1 Harlem and look on the video, but you'd have to manipulate. So I just, you know what I mean. So you got the title.
Yes.
We're talking. So don't say anything profane because we're out on YouTube.
Right.
At the same time. But Wally, we just was laughing because Wally was giving out the Zoom ID. We had to stop him for a second.
Yeah.
This is purely experimental, by the way. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so but everybody's here. You're here. Sue's here. I got the guy, the young kid, Jay Ron, is going to be out on the street somewhere. So he'll be coming in remote whenever. He said he's going to be out there, but he's a young guy. He might not get up to a few minutes.
Okay.
But he'll be coming in out, and he'll be able to give us something outside. And I believe when people do the radio checks, we should be able to hear them. So,
okay, good.
So as soon as somebody does a radio check, then we'll know.
Okay.
Maybe, so get somebody on their radio and do it. I think we heard one already. I'm not sure.
Right. Well, I'll do one at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to test one? You can do one now. You got to close your mic on this thing.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hang on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just gave Wally the YouTube ID.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's me. Sorry, Sue.
Okay, yeah, I just gave Wally the YouTube ID, so he's good. And I cautioned him about giving the Zoom ID out, so he's good.
Cool.
Hey, Bob.
He's doing the radio check, Stu, so see if we can hear the radio.
Good morning. Okay.
is Hen 1 calling for a radio check. Hen 1 calling for a radio check. Over.
Did you hear
Hen
that?
1, network control, read you loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over. Network control, I read you loud and clear, both on the radio and on the Zoom cast. Over.
That would be Streamcast to you, Bob.
That's the 10-4. Okay. This is network control. I'm getting ready to send out that YouTube address on the end line. Over. I read you loud and clear. Do not give out any personal information on anything other than our secret bat line. Over. 10-4. Network control and line.
Still, were we clear on YouTube?
Clear on YouTube. Bob, I heard that report on the walkie-talkie, but I didn't hear the walkie-talkie on the Zoom. They're not tied in? Is that right?
No, I heard it. I heard myself in the headphones, so I heard it on the Zoom.
So
I'm
did
sorry. I mean on the Zello. On the Zello. That's what I mean.
Oh.
On the Zello.
Oh, okay. I did not hear it on the Zello.
Okay.
Test
But
that
I-
now?
No, it's working fine on the virtual studio and on YouTube. That's working fine there.
Okay.
So just
Yeah.
go on. Can somebody go on the Zello and do it? Because I think it'll work for Zello as well.
Yeah, WEBT Unit 2 calling for a radio check. Come in, Kay. WEBT Unit 2 calling for a radio check. Come in, Kay. WEBT Unit 2 calling for a radio check. Come in, Kay.
WEBT 2 is network control. I read you loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over.
Network control, WEBT Unit 2 reads you loud and clear, both on the Zello as well as on our YouTube and virtual studio platforms. All systems working. Over.
All systems working. We have a little bit more to put together. But at this point, getting down. So the network control standing by.
Okay, Sue and Bob, now that we got all systems go, that means that, and we're also recording this to archive the after action report or whatever that's going on. So we'll have it for another particular time when we decide to see if we know what the hell we're doing.
Right.
But
I'm pretty impressed with us, by the way. and I have to say, I don't impress easily.
Well, okay. Well, but I had one particular. We have been speaking yesterday, and I wanted to just bring this up since we're just chatting. We had been talking about last night about the that noise in the background here, my stupid cat who's having a problem.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You may hear my cat.
Oh,
Somebody's got two things open at the same time. Be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So anyway, that noise in the back is my cat. But we were talking last night a little bit about some of the things that we heard on the news, particularly talking about how, for me anyway, how Trump had brought his nephew into the press conference with regard to the ventilators. And I was just wondering, did anybody see that but me?
No, I try not to watch too much of that stuff.
I missed it too, intentionally.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm like the rest of the press. I'm boycotting his press conferences because they're nothing but the pep rallies and
Misinformation and propaganda, if you ask me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we're in the age of some of those things. I find it interesting that when you look at some of the stuff that we just put together here, kind of on the ad hoc on the fly, so to speak, how now all of a sudden people can get the word out and exchange information without having to rely on, as we did as kids, for the news to come on for 15 minutes every night.
Yeah, well, we had Walter Cronkite. At least we had somebody we felt like we could trust.
Well, I read some. It's funny you said that. I read some place where people were making disparaging remarks about Uncle Walter.
Yeah, what'd they say?
Well, they were saying that he at sometimes would allow himself to be manipulated. But then I realized that if you're on network television, you're ostensibly on there to pay your rent.
Right.
And you're not going to be a truth teller like with this situation where you can just get on here and speak out.
And you didn't notice I did say felt like we could trust him. I'm not really saying we could trust him, but we know we can't trust anybody these days.
No. Well, the other thing is, I was noticing. I don't know if you guys noticed. I was noticing, and this is more in line of the subject. I have been noticing that more and more people are wearing masks now than before.
Oh, absolutely, and it's also interesting. One of the things I find is that New Yorkers, we have a higher IQ, especially when it comes to like situational awareness. And so, the party line was for a long time was that, oh, we don't need, masks for regular people. They don't really do anything, save them for the first responders. And I understand why they put that out there, because there is obviously been extreme shortage, and those first responders have been on the front line. But it's very hard to tell somebody, hey, don't protect yourself. And the other thing was that retailers have been able to get those N95s on the street. So if you go into a store and there's an N95 sold there, if you don't buy it, it's not going to the hospital right after you leave. So walking around, I find people have had masks on for a while, and now they've changed the narrative to say, yes, everybody should have a mask.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, for the longest, not for the longest, but for the first week. For the first few weeks, we were hearing that the virus was not airborne, and that the mask was only to contain someone who was sick, so that they didn't project the virus out onto someone else. The virus was only particles that would be attached to a surface.
Right.
And later it evolved, the virus can be airborne. Those particles can, in fact, float through the air. So the actual scientific narrative explanation evolved and changed as well.
Yes.
Well, there was a guy, the doctor from Louisiana explained it, and he explained the particles. He said, think of it like glitter, and how when you have glitter, how glitter just goes around and it goes on to something, it's hard to get it off.
Right.
He said those particles were much like glitter, and you had to figure out if you can protect yourselves from other people, getting that glitter on you, you would get it. But I was talking last night. We were talking about there was a.
How do you read network control?
Hanoi 1, network control, read you loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over.
I read network control loud and clear. My location is upstate New York, and my situation is safe. This is Hanoi 1, holding on past the 1000th hour. Over.
So they, no, I'm sure you heard that. So
Yes. The situation is safe in upstate New York. There's network control standing by.
so in this particular interview, they went to Bellevue, and at Bellevue, and I didn't know this, but the guy, they were up in the ICU at Bellevue, and they had the chrono patient up there, and the doctor was walking around the ICU with no mask. And I said, "How'd you do that?" And he mentioned that Bellevue was one of the first hospitals that specializes in infectious disease, which I didn't know, and that they did conform the ICU to some negative air, some kind of negative way that they did the air. I don't remember the terminology. Stu and I couldn't remember it last night. And in that way, so that your glitter out of your mouth didn't spread in some way because of the way they did the negative air. And they was handling the patients. They weren't. The guy said, "We're ready." He said, "But you said, well, you don't have any gowns." He said, "We got the stuff that we need because this is what we do."
Right.
Because they're an infectious disease hospital, they automatically stockpile the stuff that regular hospitals don't have. Apparently, regular hospitals have the ICU bed as just part of their game. And in Bellevue, infectious disease is their game, according to this particular doctor. So I thought it was stunning that you don't very rarely see any of the hospitals with cameras inside, and this one was. And I was asking Stu, did anybody else see that? No, he said he didn't. He hadn't seen it. I've talked to a couple of people, and no one saw that. And I'm wondering why they don't, emulate that.
Well, I know there's a cost factor. I do recall a previous report where I first heard about this negative thing, and I'm going to look to see if I can find the actual description of what it is. But there's a cost factor in equipping a facility. I remember, I think it was Cuomo talking about some of the facilities and the dorms that he was going to take over, and how you're able to go into the ventilating system. No, it wasn't Cuomo. It was one of the generals with the Army Corps, talking about how he would take over the dormitory and use the ventilation system in each room and force whatever this negative air ionization thing into that room. And
remember, Stu, I had this conversation. I've got these guys in Florida who make these machines, and they're FDA approved. And I've seen the lab tests. They kill like 99.99% of all viruses, bacteria in the air. The machines definitely work, and they're not, I mean, relative to the cost of buying these N95 masks, they're really cost effective, because you just put it in the HVAC system once, and it just works, And so it's interesting. One of the things, so I talked to this, this guy I'm working with in Florida, and he was telling me, before this, crisis, they tried selling these things to hospitals, and the hospitals didn't want them. And one of the things where they just made people, they cut down people actually being sick, which is how hospitals make money. So,
yeah, right.
We have some things that are real broken in our system. There's no question about that. And it's also interesting, I've been doing a deep dive in a lot of different things over the last couple of weeks, and one of them is, have you any of you guys heard of Event 201?
No, I haven't.
So Event 201 was a tabletop pandemic exercise. It was run in October of 2019. It was hosted by the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg Center for Health Security in conjunction with the WHO and the Gates Foundation. And they did a tabletop exercise of a pandemic. It was a coronavirus. It didn't emanate from China. It emanated in this exercise from South America. But other than that, the scenario was eerily like what we are living through right now. And they talked about a lot of the issues that we're actually going through, including shortages of medical supplies, shutdown of travel, you know, financial market collapses, you know. And so when you hear the narrative of you know, were we prepared and did they have the information? And did I mention that there was a CDC representative at the table on this at this exercise? So you can Google it. The videos for the exercise are actually up on YouTube, and it's just mind-boggling that they would be able to do this exercise literally months before you know, we had what's going on here. And the lack of preparation is even more puzzling when you you know, see this event. So they have like a highlight reel on YouTube, but then they also have the actual videos from the exercise.
I read you 5 by 5. Are we still going on YouTube?
We are on YouTube as we speak. The name, I sent it out on the pen text, but the name is Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20.
I'm gonna tune in.
Okay, guys, I did look up that negative pressure situation, and I'm just going to read a piece from what I found. It says that COVID-19 is not typically spread through airborne transmission, but certain procedures such as intubation can make the repository droplets more aerosolized. For patients who need this level of care, hotel rooms and dorms with their own air conditioning units can be converted into negative pressure rooms. Lieutenant General Todd Semonite, Commanding General of the Army Corps of Engineers.
You got a radio check coming in, Stu. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Anyway, this Lieutenant General, Commanding General of the Army Corps of Engineers, said in news briefings that a relatively simple conversion process involves adjusting the air conditioning to suck out more air out of the room through the vents. A big piece of plastic with a zippered entry would be placed over the door.
Network control, this is Benoit 1 calling for a radio check. Over.
Where's the NCO, Stu?
I don't know.
He was-
There you go.
Benoit 1, network control here, loud and clear. How you hear network control? Over.
Benoit 1 here, network control 5 by 5. Radio control. Please repeat what you said to Mark to get on the YouTube, because what you said to Mark was more than what is written in this pen text line. So can you please repeat it, and also repeat it during your morning report? This is Benoit 1. I hear you 5 by 5. Upstate New York, safe. This is Benoit 1 standing by till past the 1000 hour. Over.
Benoit 2, stand by for message of the day. It'll be coming up in a minute. Over.
Okay, so we're back.
Anyway, just to finish this, converting the process, adjust the air conditioner to suck more air out of the room through the vents. A big piece of plastic with a zippered entry would then be placed over the door, and the resulting negative pressure would prevent contaminated air from escaping the room. So essentially, it's negative air pressure that prevents the particles from moving through the air.
Oh, sounds like they're sucking this stuff back into the air conditioning system. So I wonder, how do they stop it from going somewhere else? You know, if you suck it back into the system, then it's going to get back. There's going to be a filter back there somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, you got to trap it somewhere, I guess.
It'll be trapped back that you're. Well, they got lots of filters. If you go in these big buildings, they got all these big giant ass filters all over the place. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in City College, they got a whole top floor full of nothing but filters. That filters all of the buildings in the there. And they got all these. It's pretty deep. They got these little wells and everything that go down 4 or 5 floors. I would say to myself, you fall down there, no one will never find you. So there's a lot of filtering going on in these HVAC huge systems, which lends me to think that what Bob was talking about, no wonder they don't want that, because if that thing works, a whole lot of people won't be making money, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, over and above the part that you're talking about sick, just the air conditioning people, they make a lot of money with those particular filters. And guess who? And I did not know this, but one of the biggest makers of the filters are the Koch brothers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they saw all those boxes up there, and all of them say Koch brothers, Koch Industries.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So, whoa.
Yeah, I'm looking at another story now out of Utah, where they set up tents that include negative pressure systems to help control the disease. Outside air is allowed in and ran through the HEPA filters. The air is then cleaned and recirculated 15 to 17 times per hour. The air inside the tent does not leave the space. This protects everyone from exposure.
It's like an airplane.
The negative pressure tents are a sign of the university's health readiness, blah, blah, blah.
That's like an airplane, Stu. When you're in the airplane, I think that's the same way that the system in the airplane works.
Okay.
It's regenerated.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't bring, you would think they would try to bring some of the air from outside, but it's too damn cold at the heights that they fly.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the guy said the rent's too damn high.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that quite interesting that they've figured out ways to control the air to do that. And at the same time, you have a medical system that, according to all the politicians and everything, is to have charged.
All stations. This is WQKJ 301 Harlem Information and Emergency Network. The time is now 0930. Temperature today, April 6th. Monday, April 6th. Temperature now is 50 degrees in Morrisania portion of the Bronx. The high today will be 64. The low tonight will be 48. Chances of rain today, 40%. Chances of rain in the next hour is 0. We are now in an experimental broadcast. You can join the broadcast at youtube.com, www.youtube.com. The name of the broadcast is Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20. That is Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20. All Tuesdays events are in effect. Wednesday's events are in effect. Those are Wednesday's events and Tuesday's events are in effect. This is network control. Standing by.
What a fabulous weatherman and NCO that we have
I think we should all start getting agents, man, because I'm feeling like these network people, they're going to, because a lot of them are going down on Me Too anyway. So there's job openings up there.
When you said up there, what do you mean by up?
Up because they're like up high in skyscrapers,
Oh, right.
Where all the money is.
I don't want to go up there. I don't want to go up high, too high. I want to stay kind of close to the ground myself. But I just want
to follow one final piece on the negative air thing. I found another story about a company out in West Virginia called Safeco that originally does demo and asbestos abatement. And they make these negative air machines that they are now giving away. They have 200 of them that they're giving away. And they say that the use of negative air gives buildings the opportunity to fully quarantine their facility. So this particular company has over 200 machines that they're giving away to folks that need them.
Let's get one, because I thought we should get one. I thought that if you had a I was thinking that, how you see in those science fiction movies when the guys coming from outer space and they go into the space lock and there's something in a machine runs over them to make sure they're not, to disinfect them. We're going to be having something like that in the crib. And by the way, never say crib to a white guy. I was talking to a white guy and I said, "How you doing over there?" I said, "What you got in the crib?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" True story.
Code switching, brother.
He did not.
You know what it is.
I'm just saying, inadvertently said it. He did. I was surprised that he did not know what crib meant.
How old was he? I'm curious.
60s. He was in his 60s.
Oh, well, come on.
He should know. I mean, that's an old term from back then.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't, white people weren't as tied into our vernacular,
into the culture,
back then,
True.
They wasn't down with the colloquialism. Is that
exactly.
Well, I think we should get one of those, see if we can get our hands on one of those machines.
Oh, there's a number here. They say it's available to organizations, hospitals, nursing homes, and other places possibly being exposed to COVID-19.
Well,
I don't think you can just get one for the crib. I think you got to be, a facility.
Well, I have a home and I nurse in it sometimes. Is that no, it doesn't work that way.
Hey, Bob, remember we checked on YouTube that this show was for kids.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Nursing.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah. And that's a wild image,
Yeah.
But the other thing one of the things that I was thinking about is that how are, other than the hospital, how are we thinking? And Bob, what is that you're drinking, Bob? I see a big green thing in there.
It's lime, brother.
Is that lemonade?
Yeah, lime and water.
Oh, plain lime and plain water.
Yeah, it's a nice, quick way to get your vitamin C.
Okay. Well, vitamin C is important. We need that. Yesterday
I'm about to do the whole thing. So here's my selenium.
I like selenium.
I got my
niacin. Where's your niacin?
I got my NAC.
Which stands for?
What's that?
It stands for N-acetylcysteine.
Oh.
This is very, very good antiviral properties.
And you're not buying any. You're not selling anything, Bob. You're not a doctor.
I'm not. I'm not a doctor. I'm saying what I'm using for myself. So
right. You're not selling it.
I'm definitely not selling. My name ain't GNC. I
Okay.
get but and I'm not really particularly brand conscious, other than is it available. So
right.
As it stands, this was the vitamin A. And then I also have some neem. Neem is also very good. Neem leaf. And let's see what else. Vitamin D, also very important for people of color, because we do not absorb vitamin D as easily as other people. We do, but vitamin D is important. We can convert it from sunlight. So I try to get my sun. But this is, the boost coming out of the winter. All of us should be taking vitamin D, also known for antiviral properties. And I think that's all let's see. Oh, and the vitamin C. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, that's quite impressive that you have an array of supplements.
I'm trying to stay alive. You think I'm?
Yeah,
This is not a
yeah, we all
game.
are. Yesterday, we did a broadcast with Rick,
Hmm.
Rick from WHR, the
Yes, yes,
motivational guy.
yes.
We did a broadcast with a guy from Florida,
Uh-huh.
and we did it almost the same way. And the guy from Florida, much to my surprise, mentioned that in Florida, all the news that they were getting about what was going on in New York was apocalyptic, or whatever that word is.
Yeah, well, because the news is sensationalist. They're high on sensationalism and low on actual news sometimes. So I'm not surprised. I've talked to some of my friends down south, and they're like, "Ooh, I can't never come to New York." And it's remember that movie Escape from New York. I mean, people have
Mhm.
different kind of
So,
opinions about what's going on. And
so this is interesting. So, Bob, let's start with Stu. Stu, you are very familiar with the very first New York State containment zone. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what your observations was around that?
Yes, I can. Just before I go to that, someone on the one of the WEBT folks is asking, "Are we going to open up the chat on YouTube?"
It's open. I
Okay,
believe it's
no
open.
chat. I'll respond
I'll
back.
check it right now. I think it's open. Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
you are going to open it.
I thought it was open, but I will. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, okay. Yeah, I live in New Rochelle, New York, and we were I believe the first epicenter in New York State for the virus. There was a community about a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles from where I live, still in New Rochelle, where a particular, I believe the guy was an attorney. He also happened to be Jewish, and he was at a bat mitzvah, and he had the virus, and he contaminated about 100 people at this particular bat mitzvah that he was at, and the whole community in what's called the north end of New Rochelle, which is an upscale, largely Jewish community, got infected. I think there were 150 cases that just kind of sprung up seemingly out of nowhere. And so that ended up being the first area that the governor declared a containment area, and came in and did not physically cordon off the area, but demarked it on a map, and dictated that all the schools in that area closed, businesses in that area shut down, and that asked for folks to limit their movements in that area. It's about a mile square area community in New Rochelle. As I said, it wasn't immediately adjacent to where I live, but one of the concerns that we had is that people move around the city, and they initially just closed the schools in that particular community. But what about kids that live in that community to go to other schools in the community? So that was concerned for about a week. It took the city of New Rochelle another week before they shut down all of the public schools. A week, maybe 10 days before they finally shut down all the other schools. This is all prior to the governor's pause, put the state on pause, all prior to that.
mm-hmm.
So we were a very early test case. The gentleman who got the initial case was hospitalized, and I'm not sure what his final disposition was, but last I heard, this is probably about 2 weeks ago, he was recovering.
Yeah.
So I think he's okay, although I can't say that definitively.
I think so too. Because I think we would have heard more specifically about him, because he was really literally, he was one of the first cases in New York.
Yeah.
By the way, Doug, so because you put us on as content suitable for kids, the chat is not available on the YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to change that then.
Okay.
All right, that's changed.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you, Robert. So now the chat should be enabled.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
we got a couple of our hand
Are you letting
members.
Carol know about?
Yeah, well, she let us know. She let us know on the text line that it wasn't live, and we had somebody else who mentioned that. So I also checked it on my phone, and I saw that when I tried to look for chat, that's what it said.
Right. Okay.
So,
Okay, great. That was good.
yeah.
Okay, chat room's open. So if
Mhm.
anybody got a question, they can do it. You know, we'll translate and tell people what they are. So the
Mhm.
chat is available in case somebody has a chrono question. So Stu, you've experienced that first containment area in the state when you only did a certain area. And what do you think the results have been of that?
I think they did a pretty good job up here. We don't get stats on a city by city basis in Westchester. The stats that we see are countywide, and New Rochelle is just one city among many here in the county. But from what just anecdotally, and from what we hear from the mayor, who does send out weekly robocalls, it looks like it was effective. Folks stopped going up there. I know there were a few shops that we used to go to. We don't go up there anymore. And a lot of the businesses up there, they were some of the first to shutter in what's called the north end of New Rochelle. But I think the containment was effective. We have not heard about a lot of cases here in the city. Again, this is anecdotal. I don't have hard official statistics, but I think I would have heard either through our mayor's robocalls. We also are in touch on an ongoing basis with faith leaders in the city who are also have their fingers on the pulse of what's happening in this town. And I think it was largely contained. I think it was effective from what I can gather.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at a quick news update, just for people to know they've closed down all the dog parks in New York City, so that you can't bring your dog there and congregate. I guess that's what people do at the dog parks. That's no longer available. And one other thing, the people at the New York City Housing Authority employees employees are walking into tenants' apartments and making repairs without wearing protective masks. And nice officials say the masks are on back order. I just thought I'd throw that little news in there.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. You can't get, if you're trying to get Verizon or anybody to come out to do anything for you now, they're not coming. And I'm surprised that the workers in NYCHA, you got to give them a big up, that they're still willing to go out and do their jobs, as much as people have maligned the authority. That some of the frontline workers are pretty good people, and they're out there working. I see them collecting the garbage, because they collect their own garbage, by the way, in their big city, and they're doing it. So I'm impressed with that.
Yeah, hey Doug, why don't you talk a little bit about the food drive that we helped participate in at one of the NYCHA developments?
Well, that is actually we did we did that live. That you mentioned this to us. I was just watching it last night on YouTube, where we went out and Fresh Direct gave 500 boxes of food to Grand Hunt. I think they're doing it on a rolling basis too.
Yeah, NYCHA developments throughout the city.
Yeah, on some kind of basis, and they did this in concert with the borough president, Gail Brewer, and we were tasked with going out and as part of the emergency broadcast team, and not only documenting that, but talking to some of the people, the recipients, and helping them give out some of the stuff. And so it was a lot of cool people. A lot of people came for that, and that some of that stuff that we did is actually on the YouTube and archives. So it's pretty interesting. I thought it was interesting how all of us everybody was masked down and gloved down there. There were people who were coming to the window or where they had the little station set up without their gloves and without masks. And, they had to be told that you got to have a mask to go. What are you doing? So the lack of information about these kinds of things was, I thought, a little stunning. There was even one young fellow who was part of our group, who wanted to who was signing people up, and he didn't have a mask. We had to go get him one. So some of the people have not taken this stuff seriously, and I think people should take it seriously, because infectious diseases and viruses are all part of humankind. You know, measles is super highly contagious. And, the measles was killing people. They had the German measles. They had measles was taking people out of here, man. Until they came up with a vaccine for that. Same thing with tuberculosis.
Right.
Smallpox.
Right.
So when people start thinking that this is some outlier or the virus is some outlier, I would say that that's not true. I would say that viruses have been a part of humankind since time immemorial.
Well, yeah, let me also expound upon that because
thanks, Bob.
You are absolutely right. Our bodies have been defending us against viruses since the day we were born. And the truth is that we have a collection of viruses and bacteria and organisms that live in our body safely all the time. They have a term called the microbiota, and it's an area in the gut where all these bacteria are sequestered, and they actually help our digestive system. You've heard of probiotics, and probiotics are where you're putting some of these organisms back in, but you actually have them naturally, and we have literally trillions of microbes in our body all the time, and have had them since we were born. And so our body has a really effective system for being able to deal with viruses and bacteria and all sorts of microbes. But what happens is that when we get out of balance with our immune system, then the protective mechanisms that keep them from attacking us, they get out of whack, and then it's like a hole in the fence, and you have one of them, okay, let's go, and it escapes, and it can wreak havoc. And so our body systems is actually incredibly able to deal with viruses. So there's something in the mindset of how it's being portrayed, like, and so there's certainly the actions that we take are appropriate, but it creates this idea that we need to live in fear of these small organisms, and we've been living with them since we've been here. And so that's why the immune process is really so much more important for us to start to understand how that works, because if we can understand how it works and we can understand how to optimize our own immune systems, we just have much better protection. One of the problems with vaccines, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means, but the problem with vaccines for viruses is that viruses tend to mutate a lot quicker than say something like measles. And so that's why we can have a measles vaccine that, we had them as kids, and they still have pretty much the same vaccine. But these viruses often mutate even in the midst of their spread. And the problem with these vaccines is these vaccines are made to defend against one particular strain, but they can't protect you against all strains. So it's
let me ask you this, Bob.
Yes.
I saw that somebody sent me a photo of 1918, and I did not notice, and we haven't been taught this, but in 1918, when they had the big giant flu, everyone was mandatory that everyone had to wear a mask. So you had people who were wearing the mask. So this idea about, again, that some of these things are outlier events, it's probably not really true. And I think a lot of it, when you really think about it and you listen to the mainstream sort of media, they cast most of their stuff in the notion of economics. And they try to tie economics in it. And Brother Leroy had a wonderful guest on, this guy named Dennis Speed, who came in at the beginning. I remember the Burkers, March 5th. He came on the air, and he mentioned that we were headed towards two types of pandemics, a medical pandemic and an economic pandemic. And, we were, because of everyone's naivete, we were just sitting there going, because we were just hearing about it at the beginning of March. Here, they was really coming in full force. And as the weeks and days went by, and as you listen to the administration and some of the people who run the commercialized TVs, you could see that they were really, really strongly concerned about the economic part and not the public health part.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, at the same time, saw that some of the public health institutions, again, given at how much they charge for everything, were not really prepared with the supplies and everything they need. And then you saw, on top of that, that most of the things that we need are not made here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're starting, I think we've all started to see some of the flaws of having a just-in-time global supply chain, particularly when the airlines are not moving like they one time, because I guess a lot of cargo stuff will move through the planes. So what do you think about that?
And then, well, this is ironic because again, this goes back to exactly what I was talking about with this.
We got one. Hold on, we got one, Bob.
Okay.
And due to network control.
This is network control. Proceed, and two.
Network control, and last night, and I had a little difficulty breathing. But I am, and I'm listening to the Zoom on the YouTube. I'm considering giving a call to the clinic and maybe perhaps taking a trip to the clinic. I don't see that it's anything serious at this point. I don't have a fever, but it's kind of difficult for me to talk. And overnight, I was kind of concerned because one thing not being able to talk is pretty much kind of difficult, a little bit breathing. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. So I'm going to make a call to my doctor's office and maybe perhaps see what the protocol.
And two, I concur that you follow through immediately with this. It's nothing to play with. I will pass the word on to the team chief, and we will keep us abreast of what the situation is and any necessary needs if we can help. Over. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was real time right there.
Yeah.
For the information, this is network control standing by.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. This is real.
Yeah. So you really have to be extremely vigilant at this particular time. I was reading how I saw one of the doctors on TV saying how you got to wipe down all the surfaces, how you got to be careful of touching things that where other people touch. So these are all issues that people need to be careful of. And I just wanted to segue into the thing about tuberculosis, because tuberculosis was another highly infectious disease that that can be transmitted through people's breathing on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there, until they came up with the various medicines for tuberculosis, people were dropping like flies from that. And we didn't have the kind of communication system that we now have, where a lot of this information is getting out instantaneously and people can hear stuff. So again, we all have to recognize that these kinds of things have been around from time immemorial, and they're part of the human experience. And not to minimize anything, but they're part of what's going on. So we have to, understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So many things going through my head. I was mentioning that a lot of the things that you brought up about the lack of preparation are specifically addressed in this event 201, which again you can Google or you can search it on YouTube and probably find those videos, and they're very, very interesting to watch. Not only there's one, like I said, that's a highlight reel, but then there were several section videos, one on travel and trade, one was on the economic aspect of it, You know, it really puts the lack of preparation in perspective, because
Gotta
while
come
we,
up.
yeah, you know, because we can place a certain amount of the blame on on our federal government, but there's also a lot of private sector blame. I don't understand why all these hospitals, either public or private, didn't have more ventilators. Not only just for this, but really for any event. If there was any large scale disaster, you know, at the start of this event, I recall very clearly on March 15th, when Cuomo was doing a press conference and basically saying there were only 3,000 ICU beds in the whole state, and they were 80% occupied already. So at that day, you know, he was talking about 600 capacity. And so I'll give them credit that they went into immediate action to start to figure out how to create more bed space and get more ventilators. But I don't understand why we didn't have more of a reserve supply of this.
Well, because let me just interject. You know, what's very clear to me is that it's the capitalist organization of this society, of this country, that really is to blame. It's not the individual institutions. It's the fact that the institutions are all profit making. Society is organized around profit, and it is not profitable to maintain excess capacity when in fact it may not be used. So there's a very small margin of error in the entire healthcare system, because it's not profitable. And to me, this whole pandemic is exposing just what a fraud the whole system is. It's really about making money. It's not about maintaining folks' health. At bottom line, and I'm hoping that this is really being exposed in a way that things will change going forward. You mentioned Cuomo. One of the things that I see him doing that probably needed to happen is the hospital network, where all the hospitals are communicating with each other and sharing information about beds, about resources, about patients, about utilization. To me, that seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
Something that in normal times should be in place.
Hold
But
on, Stu. Hold on a second, Stu.
Station, this is WQKJ 301 Harlem Information and Emergency Network. This is network control. The message for the day. The weather is 54 degrees. The disaster time is 1000 hours. The high today to be 64 degrees. The low 48. This tonight, there's 40% chance of rain throughout the day, 0% chance of rain next hour. We are presently on an experimental broadcast with that stream on YouTube. The name is Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20. That's Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20. All hand activities for Tuesday are in effect. All hand activities for Wednesday are in effect. This is network control. Standing by.
Go ahead, Stu. Thank you. Thank you, the Most High NCO. Thank you for standing by, and continue, Stu.
yeah, so you know, the whole coordination that Cuomo has put in effect, healthcare system coordination, citywide, statewide, throughout New York State, where all the hospitals are talking to each other about what resources they have, how many ventilators they have, how many masks they have, how many gowns they have, how many ICU units available, how many nurses and doctors and other healthcare professionals are available. All of that information now is being managed and in a database where all that information can be shared across the entire healthcare system in the state. One would think that that would have been something that would have been there from day one, but it was not. And I'm positing that it was not because the healthcare system is organized in silos and individual institutions are organized, yes, to provide service, but more fundamentally to make money. And that has been turned on its head with this pandemic. And I'm hoping that that will be a positive outcome. Basically the networking of all the information systems and management of the entire healthcare system on a holistic basis. I'm hoping that's going to be a positive outcome and that it will survive this pandemic and be a new model for moving forward. In many ways, I think New York as the epicenter of the crisis here in this country and the first epicenter is providing a model for the rest of the country. And I applaud Governor Cuomo with his holistic approach to getting all the various parties involved and monitoring and coordinating and managing in a very holistic way. And I think that's a model for the rest of the country. And I hope that kind of model survives us getting through this pandemic and that we learn something from it, that this is the way that we need to take care of ourselves and take care of our society.
So, Sue, don't you think that this has exposed, and you said a little bit of it, to me, a big flaw in that you're asking the people who repair us. Let me say that again. They're asking the people who repair us as human beings, they're asking us to allow the people to repair us to make money off of that. And I find that, I listen to you, I find that fundamentally disingenuous because the people who repair us should not be making money. They should not be talking about affordable healthcare. They should be talking about quality healthcare. Who the hell, if you got, God forbid, if you got, cancer in your toe, you're not looking to go to the $5 cancer in the toe doctor. You want to go to Sloan Kettering or, some of the most places. So you're not interested in affordability. And I find it really disheartening when I hear them on TV saying things like, "Oh, we're going to have affordable health care." I'm going like, what the hell are you talking about? You don't want affordable health. You want quality health care. You don't need any of that. And I think what we're seeing is the Swiss cheese way that they're doing it. This is just me. What do you think about that? I don't think they should be charged. I don't think it should be a for-profit thing. What do you think about that?
Let me just jump back in, Bob. I know you got something to say as well. I just want to say it's not just the people, the doctors, the providers. It's institutional and it's systemic. It's the hospitals. It's the entire healthcare system, and it's the pharmaceuticals and the drug companies that are also symbiotic with the healthcare system.
Like a cabal?
Yes. Oh yeah, it absolutely is.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I did have something. Unfortunately, while we were on, I got a call I had to take, and I just lost another friend.
Wow. Oh man.
Yeah.
Down like Bob.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Going like fly.
So yeah. So I wanted to. I got a text that I.
Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, you the 10. Oh, he's calling me. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead, ATL. I'm not doing that.
But he would be able to get in. Over.
You said I'm doing this?
You're in the program. Over the channel. Over. That's not you?
Of course not. Somebody's doing that. I thought that was you doing that.
So that's a glitch we got to work out.
Oh.
I really, I'm glad that you got the two together.
Yeah. Okay, but they cleared, whoever did cleared it. So go ahead. Go ahead, guys. It was just the NCO comment.
What I want to talk to you is technical, so we'll talk later.
Is the NCO going to join us on the virtual conversation?
NCO, you're being requested to join in on the virtual conversation to the studio as soon as possible. Thank you. So he's been alerted.
Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to read this.
Monitoring 4 channels at the same time, so I'll try, but don't get too much from me.
Okay. Well,
that's right, NCO. What are you talking about? You're supposed to be monitoring 4 channels. Continue, Bob. I'm talking to the NCO in the background.
okay. So this was a text I had gotten from Carol Johnson, and we've been working on. We're trying to put together some more specific information on how people can actually shelter in place at home when they have symptoms, because we think there's a kind of a gap in the information. So I wanted to just kind of put some of this stuff out. If you are feeling symptoms, you can eat an orange or any citrus, boil the skin and drink it like hot tea, because that's a very quick way to get vitamin C. Similar to what I'm doing with my limes. Limes are good, and you can drink it like that, but also boiling it is good. And this is for people, if you don't have access to vitamin C, you might have access to the fruit. So you want to get that in your system. Tell people don't panic. Get as much hot liquids as you can manage. No cold fluids or ibuprofen. Stay warm. Get rest, but don't stay in the bed. Get up and move your body every few minutes. In fact, going back to drinking the hot liquids, I heard one recommendation that you try to drink something hot every 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, I heard that too, Bob.
Right. And one of the reasons is that, so in our body, we have basically, everything is going in through our nose or through our mouth. If it's in through our mouth, we have 2 tubes that connect. One is the trachea, which goes down to the lungs, and that's bad because that's where the virus goes and infects. The other is the esophagus, which goes down to the stomach and the rest of the alimentary canal, and that's good because when the virus goes to the stomach, it hits the stomach, which is full of hydrochloric acid, and that kills the virus. So it goes down to the if it gets flushed down through your mouth, you're drinking hot liquids into the stomach, you're clearing yourself out and you're putting the virus at a place where it's not going to hurt you, it's going to get killed. But if it's allowed to fester in your mouth and it works its way back to your trachea, then it goes down from your trachea into your bronchi, which are the tubes that it's like the trachea is like one tube, but then it breaks off one to each lung, and those are your bronchi, and then it gets into your lung system, and that's where it all starts to go downhill. And so if you're feeling a sore throat in the back of your mouth, you want to gargle immediately, something like Listerine. It's antiseptic, good. It's good. Or there's some other antiseptic gargles you can use, but anything you can do.
Salt works too if you don't have a gargle, Bob.
Right, that's right. Salt works as well. So these are just some this I didn't read this part. Gargle with warm water, salt, cider vinegar, or good old Listerine. Mm-hmm. If you have ginger, turmeric, and garlic in the house, boil it and drink it. Drink it also. You can use it with a touch of honey. You want to make sure that anyone in the household, if they're showing symptoms, you have to implement isolation protocols. And what is that? You want to put them in a separate room, preferably close to the bathroom, and because they're going to be needing frequent trips. And you're going to want to make sure that that person stays hydrated. But at the same point in time, you've got to have some protocols to keep everybody else in the house safe. So one of them is that have a mask for the person who is sick. And so that if they're in the room with somebody else, they should have a mask on to protect anyone else who goes in. Number 2, surfaces. You got to wipe down everything. whoever, you know, we all have somebody in the family that is the neat freak and the germaphobe. That's the person to follow. If you're the sloppy person in the family, you have to become the neat person. You know, these are life and death situations, and these are not the time to just stay on to your old habits. We have to step up our game, and that means wiping everything. And so there are hot spots in the house. So think about a hot spot as somewhere where everybody touches. So that starts with the doorknob coming in and going out, and all the different doorknobs. It starts with the handles on the faucet for the sink, because we're all washing our hands. But what's the first thing we have to do before we wash your hands? You got to turn the water on. So you just touched it. Now you washed your hands, and then you touch it to turn it off. So you just negated it, because your hands were, you transferred it to the handle. Now you wash your hand, and then you turned it off and you took it back, and then you reinfected yourself. So you have to really think about those things. You got to think about the handle on the toilet. You know, you got to think about the toilet, you know. And so these are things, sometimes we don't like to think about these things, but you know, it's life or death. Being clean, being a germaphobe could be the difference between life or death. So we have to kind of go into a mode where we literally wipe everything down on a regular
Don't forget the
basis.
kitchen, Bob. The kitchen is the other area that everybody touches.
Oh, correct. Absolutely. And not only does everybody touch it, but you're preparing food there that everybody eats. So, you know, you're talking about wiping down all the surfaces on a regular basis. I think if people are sheltering in place with a family, one of the things to do, assign a different family member every day. Somebody's got to be on wipe duty, and somebody should go wipe all the hot spots down. And so, you know, if you got, you know, a group of people in there, assign it to one person each day. All right, you got to get up first thing in the morning, wipe down all the hot spots. Next day I'll do it. Next day so and so else would do it. But we have to have these protocols, and it's really, really important, because the problem in sheltering in place is that if you're sheltering with somebody who actually has been exposed to the virus, then you got to make sure you take care of everybody, because what we don't want to happen is not only the tragedy of losing one member, but losing the whole family to this. And so so think about the prevention protocols, but also think about immune protocols. And
okay, Bob, thanks. We're joined by the NCO of the day, Wen. And I just wanted to say that, remind everyone that if all you have to do is, not all, but one of the things you should remember, think about when you're a kid and you had the measles. One of your brothers or sisters had the measles, and you had to stay away from that particular person because you were going to get the measles. So think of things in this particular manner. That, you know, think of like being a kid and having the measles, and you got to stay away from somebody. But when you have joined into the broadcast, and when can you hear us?
He's multitasking.
Is that what he's doing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Wayne, now that you're joined into the broadcast, you have a set.
At this point in time, you folks are speaking on very protocols, medical protocols, and sanitation protocols, and I just concur with everything that's being said, and I'm basically listening. Getting the part where you were talking about, where Stu mentioned that.
Uh-oh.
Be back.
He froze.
He'll be back. If he frozen, then he must be on that fabulous Altice connection over in the boogie down, and he's got to unfreeze himself, and I think he'll recognize that. Yeah. But in the meantime, wow, that's interesting. the NCO is frozen. Stuart.
Mm-hmm.
Stu, are you frozen too, Stu?
No, I'm not. I'm good. I'm on Altice as well, but it's working up here.
Okay, now yeah, you on? Okay, because you know what? I was watching on I was watching on YouTube, so I was watching on YouTube and listening. I got a little ahead of myself. YouTube is slightly delayed, so we're gonna have to wait for the NCO to come back and give us his report. He may be still multitasking and such. But at least now we're kind of having a way to talk to people about the thing, and I was really interesting to hear the person who got on the radio talking about the shortness of breath, which led to talking about the at-home protocols.
Yeah.
I think that's all. I think that stuff is important, and it's important that we're able to honestly share information amongst ourselves, because this is more like the town square. This is more like being on the block when we were growing up, when it was a luxury when somebody even had a telephone.
Right.
You know, I remember growing up when most families didn't even have a phone, and you know, and some people didn't even have a TV. And you would go to people's house and you would go, yo, there ain't no TV. And they have a big radio sitting in the living room, which you know, which I thought was we're living in a whole nother kind of world now. And information about what's going on and the things that we need to be doing is super prevalent. You know, just like those supplements and stuff that you were able to show, Bob. So I think at some point people are going to start to realize that they're going to have to get the information from themselves. And sharing of information is really how the culture has how we have progressed as a culture, and not being dictated to by, you know, the as Stu calls it, the
Right.
UOY.
Well, and you know, to get back, Stu brought up obviously some larger issues about you know, just seeing the breaks in how the capitalist structure has created these risk areas that we're now finding. Yes, you can, you know, the number comes up at some point in time, and that's what we're seeing. So I'm my you know, if I had to put on my futurist hat, you know, which the future is really only like months now. I'm not prognosticating for the
I don't
next.
see the hat, Bob. Where's the hat?
Well, you know, I don't want to get off the broadcast, and plus I got my headset on.
We
But
don't want you to
maybe that is maybe, you know, and I've got tinfoil inside my futurist hat.
I'm saying we don't want you to come back with a cone on your head.
Yeah, so they don't get me. But I feel like we have to make moves toward more self-sufficiency across the board. And you know, we at HEN have always been talking about seven survival priorities, which is food, water, shelter, health and medicine, power, communications, and sanitation, and how we
Hey,
have
Bob, excuse me, Bob. Can you just say those things again a little slower?
Okay, so food, water.
Network control, yes, I'm frozen out.
Okay.
I'm on my way back in.
Okay, great. So food, water, shelter, health and medicine, power generation, communications, and sanitation. So going through those real quickly. Food, you know, the same issue that we have about medical supplies is we have an issue about the safety of the food supply chain. And I have a extreme concern for the aftershock. So when I say the aftershock, we know we're in the middle of the pandemic. We know it's probably going to peak over the next few weeks and likely to drop off because of all the social distancing, stay-at-home protocols. However, we also talked about, okay, so the economics is the aftershock. It's like having an earthquake, and then after the earthquake, there's a tsunami. So there's direct connection to it. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about is insecurity of the food supply. You've got a bunch of farmers who are now literally having to discard food, the dairy farmers who are just dumping because they can't get their food to market and it's going to spoil. So we're going to probably see food shortages in the next few months. And then
got a radio check, Bob.
Want to report that Illinois One has gotten on the radio and has the radio up with Bob and Stu. Just want to ask, do you want me to, because I know you're busy, to send out to Hen to ask for prayers for Mark? Illinois One is in upstate New York and safe. Illinois One will be standing by for long past the 1000th hour. Over.
yes.
Check with the team chief. I can't deal with that right at this moment. It has been broadcast.
And I'm sure she's aware.
And I'm sure she's aware of it, so check with her.
Network control standing by.
Okay, the WAN is back.
Yes.
WAN is back alive
Yeah.
with us.
Yes. So
Hey Bob, let me interrupt you for just one quick second. I just want to read something from this guy named Shelly Palmer, who is a
I know who he is. Yes.
And he just, for those who don't know, he's another futurist like Bob and a technologist. But I'm just going to read this quick. He said this morning. He says, my best friend is in a medically induced coma, and today is his 6th day on the ventilator. He has a very small chance of survival. If he does survive, I'm told that he will never be the person he was before he was intubated. I am sharing this with you because my best friend from childhood, my true brother from another mother, was a complete chrono denier. He truly believed that the severity of the disease and the scope of the problem was being hyped for political reasons. My friend is not a stupid person. Quite conversely, he's a brilliant doctor. What he had was a political ideology, and he chose political rhetoric over science. Please don't make the same mistake. Go ahead, Bob.
Wow, that's really that's pretty wild.
That is wild.
Yeah. So going back, food security is a potential issue that I see. Water security, we already know in our communities is one. We're fortunate not to suffer the problems that are happening in Detroit and Flint, but believe you me, we have to address food, water, health and medicine. This comes right to the heart of it. We talk about this pharmacologically driven, insurance company driven system that doesn't talk to actually healthcare. It talks about managing illness instead of creating health outcomes. And so, and obviously, it becomes stratified. If you pay the most, you get better services, but it still doesn't teach people how to actually optimize their own health, and it creates a tremendous reliance.
No money in that, Bob. There's no money in that.
Right, exactly. So we have to look at ways that we wean ourselves off of these type of structures and have more self-reliance in all these areas. Communications, one of our 7 areas, and this is what we're practicing for us to be able to put together this network of networks, because that's what we're doing this morning, for us to be able to combine our Zello radio checks, our two-way network radio checks, Zoom networks, and to be able to put them together, and also people can communicate with us on YouTube. Also, although that chat still seems to be off, I think
it's on.
I tried it. I'm
on. Go ahead, do it. Yeah, I'm looking at the chat thing right now. It's
okay. I'm on my phone, and every time I put live chat, it says, okay, I got to reboot it. Okay, all right, let me try that.
I'm looking at it now, and no one's chatting on it, but I'm watching it. Why are we doing that? When you're in now, give us can you give us an update as to what you've picked up for the day? Because Stu just dropped out for a second.
Like I said, I concur with just about everything that was being said. One of the things that I had noticed, because because of our situation as far as developing preparedness networks, is that I've been following the city recommendations on a regular basis, both on the mainstream media and on cell phone and special hookups. And their first recommendation is for a person to stay home for 3 days to see how this thing happens. But the one thing that I had noticed that they had not done is tell people what they could do for those 3 days.
Right.
If you just followed their directions, you would just sit home and fester whatever the situation was, whether it was the virus or just a cold or whatever it was, but they never gave you any kind of advice as to what to do. And I found that programs like this were the ones that were pointing people into the direction of, you know, what to do to try to mitigate the situation. I'm not saying that this is a cure, but it'll help people. It'll help people from not having to just sit around and do nothing. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was what a month or two ago, I went to a preparedness seminar, and the main thing in the seminar was a scientist that went around the world and checked, made comparisons of how people recovered from major disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes, hurricanes, you name it. And the one thing that he found out through his studies, it wasn't just him, it was a group study. The one thing that was found out, that it wasn't money, it wasn't equipment, it wasn't communication, it wasn't none of those things that the places that recovered the quickest and recovered at all, because some places never recovered. But the thing that was common in all the places was the togetherness of people working together.
Right.
That was the main thing, coming together. Now, I'm not saying in this situation that we should be physically coming together, but just like we're together now, like Bob just said, this is 4, 5, believe it or not, this is 11 networks all on this channel. Okay? 11. All right? That's coming together. So that's what I want to say.
Okay, well, that's pretty good, Wayne, and that's important because we were talking earlier while you were doing your master manipulation of network commanding and whatever that stuff you do. And I just want to say this. I remember the day when you and I were on a roof in a hurricane, gale wind forces, and we were, you were trying to secure down an antenna while I hid in the corner like a little baby whimpering. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I was in the corner whimpering. Woo, the wind was blowing like out, and this big giant antenna, it looked like it was going to lift off the roof. And you was like, you looked like Sinbad the Sailor wrapping the chain around the thing. And I was in the corner going, and you had that same sort of bravery. Conversely, I remember when we were on another roof, same roof, and a big bird almost came and took you, and you were whimpering like. So, and then I remember you looked down at me and said, "Did you see that?" And that bird was so big, and he was so quiet. He just came up on us. He was humongous. It almost looked like a pterodactyl or something when you thought about it.
It actually looked like a small airplane.
Yeah, that thing was, and no one would believe what we saw up there. But the point I'm making is that you're right. You do have to have some sort of help. And I think now, that if you listen to Stu and Bob and some of the things that have been said earlier, I think the idea of every man for himself, the every man for himself aspect of capitalism, it does not really help in times like this. And I think that's if there was one lesson that I see that you're taking from this, the isolationist, the every man for itself, which is a flagship of capitalism, doesn't really work when you have some common problem that's common to the human experience to all of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Doug. And I'm really hoping that that's going to be a positive outcome from this whole pandemic. And, you know, that is just a consciousness transformation of folks across the globe, realizing that we are all in this thing together. We all share this one planet and the resources that are available here. And that we really got to figure out how to work together to maximize the benefit for everyone. And I'm really hoping that that's a lesson that everybody learns from this.
So Stu, so I mean, this has been a pretty good broadcast. But so, in what are some of the, because Bob was laying out some basic things about him. What else, as the head of the Murphy Broadcasting team, and because we should have that up there. What are some of what are your 2 or 3 common recommendations for those who don't know shit? Sorry for cursing.
Well, I would say one, go online and check out WHCREBT.org. That's WHCREBT.org. And that is our WHCR Emergency Broadcast Team website. And therein you'll find links to information and resources, including food for all New Yorkers. New York City is now giving away 3 meals a day to everyone in New York. It doesn't matter if you have kids in school or wherever you are. If you need a meal, there's some 400 locations across the city that are providing free meals. There's free devices, computer devices for kids that the Board of Ed is giving out. I don't know how successfully they are at this program, but there are links to that on this website. And there are links to information about botanicals and health food and other resources, to Bob's point about building up our immune system and how important that is. So this is the one resource area that I would point folks to, WHCREBT.org. And this report and other reports that we will be doing, as well as the daily public service announcements from WHCR around COVID preparedness, are on that site as well. So that's one resource area where I would encourage folks to visit on an ongoing basis and to share with their friends and family.
Okay, Wen, how can people who are uninitiated, who don't know, I can curse again, squat, become a part of the WEN, HEAD network? And you were talking about there's going to be some classes done on Tuesday and Wednesday. So can you elaborate a little bit on how people can be a part of that? How if they want to join, if they want to learn stuff, how can that happen?
If a person wants to join, they can. My suggestion would be at this point to go to maybe Bob can help you with that.
Okay. Yes. Well, you can send us an email at harlememergencynetwork@gmail.com. You could leave a voice message if need be at 347-916-6119.
Say that again. Say that. Get that number again, Bob.
347-916-6119. Leave your name, your phone number, and an email address. We're not telling you that you're going to get an immediate response because we're short staffed, but we will get back to you within 24 hours. but we will be able to get back to you and communicate more fully. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Harlem Emergency Network. So I would say those are the easiest ways to get hold of us. What else would I say?
What about the classes that Wally was talking about for Tuesday and Wednesday? Can people know about that?
Right. If they communicate to us, if they send us that email, particularly Harlem Emergency Network at gmail.com, we can email them back, because we're obviously we're taking those classes online, and so we will be offering them through similar types of platforms like this, Zoom and YouTube Live, Facebook Live. So we will be using those platforms as well for these classes. So the best way to contact us is really the email is good, because then we can send you regular information and keep you updated. I also want to also give on the immune side just one very simple tip for people who want to boost their immune system immediately. There are a lot of very, very good things you can take, but I like to keep it simple and recommend that we start with vitamin C and vitamin D for everybody. And so these are vitamins that everybody knows. They're safe. I find that for elders, you want to give them tell them something that they're familiar with, because even in an emergency, some of our elders, if they're not familiar with something, are very leery, and a lot of them are on a lot of different prescriptions, and like, well, I don't know if that's gonna mess with my other this and my other that. But vitamin C and vitamin D are some of the safest nutrients you can take. But they're very, very powerful protectors right now. In particular, if you are experiencing symptoms, to up the dosage on vitamin C. Vitamin C is water soluble. And what that means is that it goes into your system, your body uses it. Whatever it does not use at that moment, it goes to your kidneys and you piss it out. So there's no danger about overdosing on vitamin C. But if your body is in the situation where you are fighting the virus, putting vitamin C in is like sending resources to the front line of your body. And so, I would recommend that people, or I won't recommend anything because I'm not a doctor. I'm going to say that. But what I will do is say what I do and what I would do in certain situations. And I can say that freely. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
So I take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day just to keep my system up and running. If I was showing symptoms like a fever, I would start to bring that up to like 6,000 milligrams a day. If I was showing serious symptoms, I would take 1,000 milligrams an hour, continued until my symptoms subside.
Okay.
So I just want people to have that information, because these are things that you can do, if you're sheltering at home, and you may have, you might have it already in your refrigerator and not realize that it could make that powerful effect for you. So.
Okay, now Wayne, quick question. You mentioned earlier that we were on, this Streamcast was on or 11 networks. Can you name a couple of them? Is that possible?
Some I can name, some I won't name.
Some don't. Just name like whatever you think you can name, like a couple of them, so people would know that the extent of our reach.
Okay.
Go ahead,
We're on WEBT. We're on Harlem Information and Emergency Network. We're on Citywide Disaster Services. We are monitoring many of the city services, so that we can be up and ahead of the situation that's going on. We know what's going on around the city. We are on some of your camera network. So you name those.
Well, I know we're on WQKJ 301. I do remember that.
So,
you're right. You're right. We're at Wise Towers. We're at Johnson Houses. Mount Haven, Spread Samuels. We're also on the 30 of the Lemoore houses buildings. We're on some of on their locations. So you're right. I didn't realize how many there's. I was more focused on WQKJ 301, which I love saying that, which is our radio channel that we use. Thanks to the good folks over at City. So I'm glad that we're on all of these particular networks. Stu, you got something you want to wrap up with, Stu? Because we're gonna wrap. We're getting almost to the the end here. There's something that you want to go around the horn and get some final comments.
Well, okay. I would just like to emphasize the precautions that we've been saying throughout this streamcast: social distancing, 6 feet, no hugging, no handshaking, keep your distance. When you go outside, don't walk out your door without your mask and your gloves on. And when you come back in, desanitize, wash your hands, hot soap and water, throw those gloves away. They're disposable. I've also been wiping down my mask with disinfectant because I do have an N95 mask, but I don't have backup. I've got some backup surgical masks, which are not as effective as the N95. So I'm wiping down my mask. So upon entering and leaving and entering, you wash up, clean up. Absolutely. And as I just want to reiterate something that Bob said about when you wash your hands, the faucets in the bathroom, you got to clean those things, because if you wash up and if you turn the faucet on when you're dirty, you wash up, and then you turn the faucet off when you're clean, you just picked up the contamination again. That is so critical. I mean, it's subtle, but it's so important. So disinfect all the hot spots in the house. Bob said it: the kitchen, the bathroom, the doorknobs. They're so critical. When I go out, I'm fortunate enough to have access to an automobile. And every time I enter and exit the car, I wipe down the handles, I wipe down the steering wheel. This is with the disinfectant, Clorox. I wipe down all of the controls that I touch in the car, both upon entering and upon exiting. So, I mean, the very simple safety precautions, but I think these are the steps that we all need to take to make sure that we flatten the curve, as they say, and avoid catching this virus and contaminating either ourselves or our loved ones.
I would add two things to that, which we don't think about. One is our phones.
Right.
This is, and I was thinking about this the other
day. And remote controls, Bob. Remote controls.
Remote controls too, but phones, because when we leave, we take the phone out. Even if we have gloves on, we're probably likely to be using our phone while we're out.
That's
and
right.
Then come in, we do the gloves and the mask and everything, but this is one of those things you have a tendency to forget. So you really want to get in the process. If you got hand sanitizer, clean your phone off before you get it. Put that process in when you come in. And so, like we talked about, you got to think about re-entry, almost like the astronauts and airlocks and things like that. When you come in, develop a process for thinking about all the things that you use and literally desanitizing everything. So phone, also Stu and I and Wally, we wear glasses. Our glasses are right near our nose, and it's one of those things that we have to be more, I've been wearing glasses since I was a kid, so it's something that it becomes almost invisible to me, but now I've got to make that more visible and realize that I have to clean them off on a regular basis too, especially if I'm running out. I got my mask and this and that, my glasses are on. And so I'm tutoring myself now, because I'm aware that with all my protocols, I haven't really been focused on making sure that when I come in, I do that. So it's always
the eyes are a point of entry for the virus, as well as the nose and the mouth. The eyes are another entry point.
Yes. Yep.
When?
Yeah.
We got anything to wrap up with? We're wrapping it up. You got any final comments or stuff that you want the citizens to know about?
Well, pretty much, I've been kind of preaching that you needed the preparedness, and if you wait until it happens, it's almost too late. So I'm not saying that you can't do anything now, but what I am saying is that I don't believe this is going to be the last. If we live through this one, I don't believe that this will be the last that we see. So amongst getting ready, sanitizing yourself and making it so that you can see the next one, you also have to be preparing for the next one. And so with all of the emergency preparedness, things that people have been ignoring or forgetting, they need to start working on it. And now there's a new situation coming around called community preparedness. And people need, when it comes their way, they need to check that out. And that's basically what I want to say. As far as the community preparedness, if they go to sben.coad@gmail.com. That's South Bronx Emergency Network, SBEN.COD. I'm sorry, COAD, coad@gmail.com. We can give you more information about the community preparedness. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, thank you, while you said that nice and slow. So I'm gonna just say this. I'm gonna say something that my mother used to always say, and and forgive me for doing that, but she used to always say, "We live in the world of tomorrow, and you have to prepare for tomorrow, even if you think you ain't gonna be here." So I would say that that's something we should all take into consideration, because you have to prepare for tomorrow, and because there's always going to be a tomorrow, and you never know, you might be here. So with that, I'm going to close our streamcast for the day with everybody's approval, and hopefully maybe if something comes up again, because I really enjoy these. If something comes up, maybe we can get this. Maybe we can do this again next week or even sooner if possible. So I'm happy to do that. And remember, the whole program is going to be available on YouTube in the archive. So if anybody missed anything, they can come back to YouTube. They just go. What's that YouTube address again, Wally?
YouTube is at Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.20. Again,
again.
Streamcast Afteraction Report.
To the Harlem Emergency Network.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Afteraction Report, WEBT 4.6.
To the Harlem Emergency Network.
Take that, man. Let's see what he's saying.
Okay.
Go ahead, take it.
All right. I can do it now. Everybody's going. Streamcast Afteraction Report, WEBT at 4.6.20. I have to leave now.
Me too.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, good job, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
To the Harlem Emergency Network.
Yeah, somebody's calling you on the radio, Bob.
He can, it's $40, but I didn't tell him about it, but he doesn't have to.